Neal Parks just came in here, and a ghost broke his headphones. That was crazy. And Randy got it back together. All right, so Neal Parks, who is going to lead us down the road of some Columbus haunts, has joined us live. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, your mic's over here.
Yeah, we'll get you right into the microphone.
I'm even better when you can hear me. Yeah, how are you?
Yes. We're doing fantastic. So you fancy yourself as someone who is at the forefront of haunts around the Franklin County area, or just Columbus in general?
The entire region. I'm from Chillicothe. So...
Oh, yeah, I'm from Portsmouth, my friend.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you know how many times I've seen Tecumseh?
How many times have you seen Tecumseh?
No one's ever asked me that officially. A lot of people just take my word that I've seen it a lot, so I'm going to go with 12.
When we moved here, he wanted to move to Sugarloaf Mountain.
It's an amazing place.
I mean, one of the finer mountains in our country.
Oh, completely. If you want to call it a mountain.
We do.
It is
an exceptionally high rolling hill.
My family and I, we would always go see Tecumseh, and then we'd go out to a really, really fancy meal right there at the Wendy's next to the gas station.
Oh, that's the one where the burgers taste like butane. Yeah, that's great.
I really want to know about local haunts. I want to know.
So you're from Chillicothe, though. So that tells me a lot, though, because down in that area, as you get down there in southern Ohio, it's sort of like yesteryear unfolds, and you start to see where
old time.
Yeah, but the steel mills and all of these things that were so prevalent, shoe factories across southern Ohio, and I just know, and I don't even really know, but if I felt like ghosts were anywhere, that's where they would be.
Well, the awesome thing about those regions, like Chillicothe and Portsmouth, where you're from, those are all towns that are right next to a large body of water, the river, for example. And a lot of those are sacred sites next to that, from where the indigenous people would set up camps, set up burial sites, and so forth. And then, of course, during the industrial age, so much of that got decimated because people didn't understand history or the importance of that sacred land, and they would come in with bulldozers and move these relics or these items out of those graves and either stockpile them or then create their own idea of a mound, which is sort of a Western white idea of how to set up a mound, and that really created a lot of negative energy and angry ancient energy.
So are you telling me that the mounds, like the one here, what street is that on, McKinley?
Yeah.
It's McKinley.
Is that real, or is that white-made?
That one is actually authentic.
Okay.
It felt authentic because there's a squig. It's like it goes into like a spiral squiggle to the top.
Yeah.
Where like the other ones when we went to visit by the prison.
Oh yeah, those are kind of cool down in Lucasville.
Yeah, Lucasville.
Yeah.
Okay, are those man-made?
Half of them are still approved by the Ohio Department of...
Clearly they're all man-made, but you know what I meant.
Yeah. No, at that time, aliens were assisting the indigenous people with that, since they finished the pyramids in a timely fashion.
Right.
Yeah.
They figured, hey, we got a couple extra minutes, we'll come over to Southern Ohio.
We got some bricks left. We can build a few mounds.
Leftover soil. Where do we dump this?
Yeah. The Nile, the Scioto, it's kind of the same, guys, But, it's interesting that you said that about Portsmouth and the rivers. There's a confluence there where the Scioto and the Ohio meet, and the Shawnee felt very strong about that.
Yeah, funny story about the Shawnee in that region. They would make it a point to always abduct the white redheaded children, and then they would give them mohawks and send them back to their family as sort of a way to say, keep your kid off my lawn. So it was sort of like their marker in that area.
Can you
they
imagine?
weren't recognized among the civilized tribes until much, much later when they converted into the Cherokee way of life.
Yeah.
And then they started trading with the white man, but before that they were deemed savage.
Yeah, the Cherokee Shawnee were like the real first sort of infusion of them starting to sell off everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The Tecumseh story is really amazing, and, there's so much history about that.
There's so much history.
With
It's
Leather
very
Lips up in the Delaware area, there's so much to explore. But so if someone was to ask in that area, like, where did you start? Like, where was the first haunted area, quote unquote, that you explored?
This was back in 1995. I'm going way back when grunge was still fashionable.
Yes.
So it was the Majestic Theater in Chillicothe, which is still the most highly used theater of its nature, built in the mid-1800s, then rebuilt in the late 1800s, essentially reconstructed because of the fire in 1883, I believe it was. And now they're adding to the Majestic, adding a whole new wing, which is stirring some things up. But in 1995, it was a monster movie marathon, and I went with some friends in costume. I was dressed as Darth Vader. I named my son Luke after Luke Skywalker.
You're a big fan.
He had me bring this mug with water in it to drink it and think of him as I'm thirsty.
There you go.
So
there's Lucas on it. Okay.
Where was I? See, I do this a lot.
Yeah, so you're dressed
so
up in the
Majestic
theater.
dressed as Darth Vader. Oh, I love the sound effects. So I take a break from one of the films, go to the restroom, and planning to hit the concession stand on my way back. And for some reason, weird things happen to me in the restroom. So I go to this archaic
Same
restroom.
thing with Rick, too.
Now, wait a second. So you say weird things, just like you're hearing things, or like physical, like you feel. I don't mean like as a joke. I mean
like state senator sliding their shoe under my stall. Yeah.
Like when people say that, you feel like a wind. I mean, like what do you feel?
I don't know if it's the conductive energy of the water itself, or the fact that you're trapped in that square room and it acts like a panic cage with all of the lights and whatnot, creating a high level of electromagnetic energy. I seem to be in tune with that. So it seems like when I go to a restroom that has multiple amounts of lighting and probably poor faulty wiring, like in the Majestic, because it's low ball gauge from 20th century, if not the 19th, it's just been reconstructed. So I go into the Majestic, and I walked past what appeared to be a janitor in one of those 1950s Shanana Fonzarelli jumpsuits.
Okay.
So he's standing there mopping the floor with his back to me. And I almost bump into him and say, "Oh, excuse me, sir, didn't see you there." He didn't acknowledge me. So I go into the stall. I like privacy. I come back out to wash my hands, and he's still standing in the same spot, mopping the same area, but there's no mop bucket, and his mop is soaking wet, and the floor around him is wet, but there's no mop bucket. So I'm wondering, is he getting the water from the urinal? This is disgusting. How's this happening? And I say to him, "That's probably the cleanest spot in the whole bathroom." And he stops and turns to look at me. He has a perfectly normal face. He's a solid person. And he takes himself in the mop and walks up the stairs in a hurried fashion. And I'm standing there, what was this about? What's wrong with this guy? Does he not like to talk to people? Is he mute or something? So after I'm walking out, I start to walk up the stairs, going towards the concession, and I feel like someone's staring at me. I look directly up the stairwell, because the stairs wrap around beyond the bathroom, and you can see all the way to the third floor, and he's peering down, holding on to the handrail, staring down at me, and he looks really angry. So what do you do in that situation? Every horror movie, you follow it. You follow the noise in the dark. So I start to saunter up the stairs as slowly and cautiously as possible, and I get to the third floor, and there's like a door that's there in front of him, and there's a whole area of pictures that are arranged along the wall that show like the staff of the yesteryears and so forth. And he goes to that door, and without turning the doorknob handle, he walks directly into it and just sort of dissipates. So I'm like, what the? And then I walk up as quickly as I can to the door, open the door, and it's a janitor's closet. There's all kinds of cleaning supplies in there. And when I shut the door, I back away a few steps and notice one of the pictures along the wall has him from like 1953 with the staff picture, the group and the staff and the crew of the Majestic at that time.
Yes.
And he was the same guy that I saw in the bathroom in 1995.
So were you intrigued to find out who that guy was?
Completely intrigued. Found out that he actually was one of the victims of a fire that broke out in the hotel that used to be next to the Majestic Theater, that the actors who were visiting would stay in that hotel, and there was this tiny little corridor tunnel that would connect from the bottom of the hotel to the bottom of the Majestic, so the actors could walk in and out unbothered. And he was trying to open up that doorway because he could hear someone on the other side screaming for help, and he couldn't get it unlocked on that side. He died from smoke inhalation in the basement.
That's crazy. And so, Chillicothe, of course, the first capital of Ohio. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of history there.
Yeah, it was actually, it's been the capital of Ohio twice, and then Columbus took that from us. So we're okay with that.
Twice. So we were, Chillicothe was, and then it went to who?
Zanesville.
Zanesville was like, let me hold that for a minute.
Yeah, hold my beer. And then it went back to Chillicothe.
And they were like, Zanesville is a terrible idea. We're back, guys.
And then we fumbled it somehow.
So was this theater the reason that Tecumseh ended up becoming such a big...
being outside?
Yeah,
the ghost wouldn't...
I want to know about that, but just like the history of theater in Chillicothe, or maybe it has nothing to do with that?
They actually do go hand in hand. There's a huge artistic community in that region. We have several local authors, some that I never even knew about till I started publishing books and having them released. We have a small community of that, like-minded artists, sculptors, people who do woodworking, creating statues out of steel and so forth.
The guy that plays Sam Kenton, has played Sam Kenton since I was 8.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude's been there forever. What about here in Columbus specifically? Right now, we have Neal Parks in, and he's an author and also...
Haunted Enough is his book. Haunted Enough?
Haunted Enough. And you can grab that online, or you can grab that at bookstores. Where can people pick it up?
Oh, you can get it on Amazon, probably eBay by now. I'm sure you can pick it up for $0.25.
Get out of here.
And my local bookstore in Chillicothe that was actually featured on NBC4 last month. Wheatberry Books is one of the best locally owned bookstores in the state. It was featured, and they've only been open for a year and a half, so kudos to them.
But what about here in Columbus? What can you tell us about this area?
Well, there's, of course, the Buxton Inn. I'm sure you've heard of that.
And where's that exactly?
That is in Granville.
Okay, Granville. All right.
I think it's 40 minutes from here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 40 minutes east. That is a really interesting location. I was invited to my wife and I were invited. She's like the Scully to my Mulder.
Okay, so you guys do this together. All right, so Randy and I know about that.
We do. She kind of ropes me in and keeps me from chasing the moon and werewolves. And we were invited to this murder mystery type dinner, get to know all the X-Files, nice. And we were invited as the guests of honor. They wanted me to tell some stories and read some excerpts from my book. Sure. And a lot of the people that were a part of it was like the movie Dinner for Schmucks. It was pretty funny.
Oh, look at this place. This is nice.
Yeah, it was quite, it is a very nice location. The bar downstairs is like a dungeon. And I wonder if they used to keep people during the Renaissance era in that location, but since this land was not anything beyond the New World before the Renaissance era, I doubt that was ever a dungeon of torture. But it does look pretty creepy, and in fact, a lot of weird things happen in that bar. Glasses are known to fly across the room. A lot of girls, when they go to change certain containers for the drinks and whatnot, or change the keg, they'll feel someone push or grab on them. I myself did not experience anything in the bar. I did get a sense of something moving around that wasn't physical, but what I experienced more was in the ballroom area where they have a lot of wedding receptions and graduation dinners. Sure. There is said to be a ghost cat that runs around.
Oh, ghost cat.
Ghost cat.
Do you have to do ghost litter?
Ghost litter, yes. Ghost poops.
Yeah, ghost poops. So,
what if it's the worst part of a ghost cat? It still smelled like a cat, and you're like, I don't even get to see this son of a bitch. What? I smell it.
It's just a cat.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to set a can of 9 lives out for it to see what happens. But we're sitting in one of the tables, and I notice one of the table drapes that goes over the tabletop cloths. It's brushing almost like someone's rubbing their foot against it. And I pick it up to look under to see who's doing that, because it's just my wife and I sitting here at this table. And I kid you not, kitten you not, this cat was under the table, and all the doors were closed. No one could get in or out at this point, and it's just us, just physical people. And this cat, this solid white cat, is under the table. It hisses at me just like that sound, and then takes off. But it takes off to where? Because as soon as it disappears from our sight, it's gone. It was a catastrophe.
Now, what about the Ohio Theater? I was over there a few times. My buddy Roman Atwood did a show over there, and we were backstage, and I was just kind of mulling around a little bit, and I found myself in these different corridors, and you're looking around.
Yes, that did feel eerie in the back.
I was by myself, and then Randy joined me, but the whole time when you're by yourself,
that was the scariest part.
You no, but what I was going to say was you definitely get the sense of you're not alone. You know what I mean? I have a pretty good fight or flight sort of, I don't know, sixth sense, if you will.
Yeah.
And, my spidey sense was going off in that place.
That's exactly what I call it. It's so funny. The Ohio Theater, that's the theater with the large chandelier. I've seen Phantom of the Opera at that theater, and Wicked.
Kind of cool.
And I've been told by people who work there that, the corridor situation, that's mainly set up for actors to move in and out of areas undetected by people that are there to see the show, so they don't get bothered in between changing and whatnot, or get stopped. So they go through a maze setup that they only know the map to, essentially. Right. They have to walk it several times to memorize it, but it keeps everyone else away. But it kind of makes me wonder if someone didn't memorize it well enough and they starved to death in the corridors and died there. That's the feeling I get.
How intense if you're an actor, you're just like, hey, anybody, you gonna bring me potato chips? Or anything. I'm dying in the corridor, guys. Is no one else, like, changing costumes because I'm the only one in here? Like, you wonder, like, how that would even happen.
So how often can you go, is this your full-time passion? Or, like, do you have another job? Or, like, how often can you go and like, collect these stories. Like, I collect rocks. I can go collect rocks whenever.
Or investigate.
Investigate.
Yeah, how
Thank
often
you.
do you find yourself,
here?
quote-unquote, ghost hunting?
Well, even Batman has a day job, so I do have something that keeps me at bay during the day. I used to do a lot more traveling around and investigating here and there, but my wife talked me into having kids. We've got 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, best decision of my life.
So what do you do with that, though, like with all this hobby? You know, your hobbies. Like, do they... How much do you let them in before it's like kids are so freaked out they can't sleep?
My kids are so into this, it's scary. My son has actually interacted with something at a location I was at in Chillicothe above Grandpa Joe's candy shop. It used to be Lloyd's Sweet Shop. And funny that it's called Lloyd's Sweet Shop at one time, because above that it used to be a brothel during the days of the canal. And my son interacted with something.
The Erie Canal.
Yeah, the Erie Canal.
When it was open, so like that branch of the canal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
And that used to be, the women would come out to the balcony area and wave their handkerchiefs to let the guys know that it's open for business. So they'd go up and pay their fare and take care of things.
Never imagine how quick you can park a John boat.
Right?
People want to talk, ask all these questions. What about...
well, hang on 1 second. So the ladies are out on the balcony and they're waving these guys down.
Yeah. And then they go up and do their thing, and that energy is still trapped there. Because at that time, of course, I want to say at that time, but unfortunately it's still today, men did not value women. They used them as objects and used them and abused them, throw them away. Kind of still the same way. It's the 21st century, but not much has changed. But I'm sure a lot of negative and energy of regret would be left behind by these women who were just tossed aside like pieces of candy, which later became Lloyd's Sweet Shop.
That is interesting. Okay. What about Mudhouse Mansion in Lancaster? Did he ever go there? One of the most haunted places in Ohio. They tore it down. Where did the spirits go?
Yeah, they tore that down. Actually, the spirits would still stay if they were attached to that property, because it's not so much the house itself.
Is it the coordinates?
The coordinates. If you were to put it in
coordinates.
It's like the battlefield of Gettysburg. If you were to put a neighborhood and zone it,
that's what they say about our neighborhood.
Every house would be haunted.
Yes.
They say that where we live in Dublin.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. They said like on the championship golf course. I guess it used to be a battlefield.
Oh yeah.
Tiger Woods said, "Tell me about it."
And they said like.
Tiger was telling you about it?
No, he said Tiger Woods said, "Tell me about it." Every time he plays over there. Yeah. So what is it? Is there a battlefield or?
It was mainly just the last days of the Civil War, and it was just
in Dublin.
Yes,
a friendly little territory skirmish, basically, just rite of passage. I mean, the war was already over, but people were still angry and holding on to their intentions, and they started raising their Confederate flag and kicking their boots in that area because they were trying to head east and get back to south, and they ended up running into a few Union soldiers that I had to kick their tail and send them home. But a lot of people died in the field that is now a golf course.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
They say, I went to University of Tennessee, super haunted on the hill. It's called the Hilltop, and that's where, like, maybe majority of your classes are. Yeah. And that one was used for a hospital during the Civil War.
Ooh, sounds like Athens.
The city was, like, our university, they used these buildings for the war.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would resume classes when the war was over.
Yeah, how do you go back from that? Talk about PTSD.
Wait, was the University of Tennessee was open during the Civil War?
I mean, it's these buildings were there.
That's wild.
That they said they would make it. They turned the building into a hospital.
I don't know if they had regular classes going on during war times. You'd probably have to duck and run a lot between sessions.
4-7. Oh, we gotta go.
Yeah.
It was founded in 1794.
Wow, look at that.
Somebody said, tell him to go to 397 East 5th Street. I used to live there, and it's really haunted.
No, 1794 is the actual tooth count of the people that have graduated the University of Tennessee.
Now, back to the investigation question. I don't really go on a lot of investigative trips anymore. I focus more on writing and research.
Okay.
I have taken a lot of cases that have been handed to me and passed them on to other teams that do stay active in the field that I find reputable, and I pass it off on to them.
Right. I see these shows on TV, or I used to watch them, and these families would be like, what do? I don't know what to do. I can't call the police to get this thing out of my house. And so does that happens to people? Like people listening right now? Do you have something in your house?
Is there a Ghostbuster, like for real? Like, can you call somebody?
Mainly, if it's something that's of dark energy or dark intent, you would want to get Man of the Cloth involved.
But which cloth? That's my question. Are they only answering to Jesus?
The ones answering to Jesus, yes.
Okay. What if I'm in Africa?
Like a tribe, like a different tribe?
Yeah, I might need to, this ghost might not know Jesus.
Say that's a slippery slope when you get into that.
Yeah, that's my question.
I'm dealing with other religions and so forth. You don't want to isolate anyone, because then you could create an adverse effect.
Can't find a priest. Got this rabbi here.
Rabbis have been known to work wonders as well.
All right, good. I just got to note. Neal Park's in here, who is an author. Randy, give us the name of the book one more time.
Yeah, it's called Haunted Enough? Okay. Terrifying Tales to Tell Your Friends. It makes me think of the ghost story books, like when I was in high school and stuff. It looks amazing.
I love it. I just have one question. How do you refrain from not talking like this all the time? Because I feel like I would go on a journey and I would have to find ghosts and I would have to talk like this. It would just become my permanent voice.
Like I said, Scully to my Mulder has kind of broken me of that. She said I used to, when I would do lectures and do conventions and festivals on a regular basis, she said I would go into this fake British accent. Kind of like Fraser Crane or something from Cheers. And here I found this, and behold, I have a debit box. Well, I don't recall ever doing that.
You feel like you're really, you're conquering new lands, I'm sure. But in all seriousness, I mean, people have called you out to research different paranoia or paranormal.
Either way, too.
Normal,
yes.
that is going on. Things that are seeming to be not of this world. In the Columbus area, what do you think is the most bizarre thing that you have been a part of? When it comes to here, we are in October, 2 days in. Start to freak me out, man. Halloween's around the corner.
Most bizarre thing I've ever encountered. One would be when I was a guest speaker at the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
I told you, Randy.
Several years ago. I've been a regular there, but I've taken some time off from it so I don't bore people. So this woman approaches me, and she seems to be distraught, and she's like, she really needed to talk to me, but not around other people. So she pulls me off to the side, and she says to me, I don't know how to tell you this, but I know I've been abducted over and over again since the age of 9. I'm like, okay, go ahead. I'm open ears. I hear stories like this all the time. And she said, no, you don't understand. They've abducted me within the last year and impregnated me. I said, really? And she says, yes. And I was carrying the child almost a full term, and then the light took me again. And when I came to, I was in the hospital, and they say I was never pregnant to begin with. But I have ultrasounds showing that I had a child in my stomach. I said, okay, did did some cult maybe take your baby or something? Or did a dingo get your baby? And I didn't really say that. That would be rude. So she went on to say that she keeps having visions of a child that she will never see or never have because it was taken from her by the higher beings, and that she encountered a child that she knew was hers, but it was aged 7 years, but she lost it about a year ago. And I'm like, okay, so it aged rapidly? She said, because it's an alien-human hybrid. And she knows it's her child because it spoke to her telepathically. Said, Mommy, I'm here, I'm okay. They need me. I have a higher calling. And I have to sit down at this point. I'm like, okay, because that was a lot to unload on a guy that writes ghost books and talks about Bigfoot and
you're like, this is a great story.
Are you like, yes?
I was thinking,
is it hard to
capitalize on?
Is it hard? Like, do you have to resist getting too caught up in the beginning?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You can end up like Alex Jones. You mentioned him earlier, and create your own crazy cult of conspiracies and. Then the government has you on a watch list, which isn't fun. I've had my phones tapped, but that's a whole other story. And that whole experience, on top of that, then there was another time at the Mid-Ohio Paranormal Convention in Dayton where these people approached me and said that Men in Black were following them. Men in Black had told them not to talk to me, and that they feel they have to share these images with me before the Men in Black take them, because they've broken into their house and ransacked their house looking for these images. And it was just random images of really weird black lines and posts that just appear out of nowhere. Within a 5-second shot, they're not there, and then within a 5-second shot, they are there. So, I mean, these were just typical Polaroids and snapshots, and I'm thinking, well, that could have been a Sharpie marker. You just gave me a quick glimpse of the image. Let me analyze the actual film. Let me look into this. Let me know more about the land where these pictures were taken. They were giving me minimal information. So there's a lot of kooks out there like that,
right.
too.
Well, and then mental health. So, yeah, you're like, mental health plus, yeah.
But that woman really shook me to the core when she shared that information.
So what came of that?
She had been following me for a while, and this was during the days of the merge between MySpace losing its popularity and Facebook becoming a big thing in 2010, 2011, when MySpace died. And she had been following me heavily on Facebook, which is one of the reasons I don't have my own Facebook anymore. I have fan pages, but I don't have anything more than just that about myself on Facebook.
Why? Because you are having people find you and come up to you with problems?
That and somehow getting my phone number, because there was a time when Facebook would take the information you put in that's supposed to be secure, and they would have on their phone number, and then I would be getting calls and texts and
all hours of the night.
Yeah.
I just heard something. I need you to come over.
Demons in my sock drawer. Yeah, I would get that a lot.
Now, what would you say is like the most definitive evidence that you've ever been a part of? Where made you a believer 110%?
It started with me at a very early age. What pushed me over the edge, I had always been aware of things, seen things, heard things, and I was told by people close to me just to ignore it.
Now you said like your mother or like your
yeah, and people at church.
And so they didn't. So your mother or your parents or whoever this is didn't ever have any sort of beliefs like you have, like where.
Oh, they do.
They do,
and they would choose to ignore it as well, and not feed it, not give it attention. But I went the exact opposite out of rebellion, I guess.
You're like, give it.
Yeah, I want
Ghostbusters in our era didn't help either. I'm sure.
Ghostbusters did not help. I mean, it's a great film, but it did not help to push that fire down, I guess. So what I kept encountering was a loved one that had died, and died under mysterious circumstances, we were told, just from old age, but it was something more depression-related.
Okay.
And I kept seeing them around the time of the anniversary of their death, not in a peaceful manner, but in a manner of anguish and despair, reaching out to me. It was freaking me out as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old. This went on until I was about 11 or 12. Around the same week that they died, I would keep seeing them in and around the property that belonged to them.
And would they come up to you specifically because they knew that you would acknowledge them?
Yeah.
Whoa.
They wouldn't speak. It's almost as if they couldn't speak. But I got a sense of despair and want and longing from them. They needed help for something. So at the age of 12, it just dawned on me, because it works for me in my area, and those around me believe and acknowledge Jesus as a savior. So it worked for us, per se, religion-wise. And I prayed to God, take them wherever they need to go. They need you. They need to pass over. They need redemption, something. Save this soul. And the sighting stopped. I never saw this person again anymore in that state of being after that prayer was said. And it's almost like a light went off that I'm supposed to do that. This is what I need to do. And it just only became, I guess it's
you're like a walking Ouija board,
like a spiritual gift almost.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you ever heard of Moonville Tunnel?
I have.
Have you been out there?
A few times I've been out there.
What is it?
What is the special nature
of this? Tunnel?
There was a train derailment that caused a lot of deaths, mainly the people on the train and a few cars near and there. There was a road at one time that went through the tunnel, and the train went over the tunnel, and the derailment caused a couple of cars to get smashed and people on the train to die. One of those being a light man, the lantern man. And people will see him to this day walking through in and out the tunnel with the lantern.
Oh my
and
God,
no
that's
head.
so crazy. No head, huh?
No head.
See,
Decapitated.
people are starting to go to these places right now in the month of October.
Mm-hmm.
They want these real experiences. They do. They're already texting in. Have you been to the Moonville? We went a couple of weekends ago at midnight. There's a bunch of crazy stuff happening. They want you to get out there.
There's a lot of weird stuff happening. Unfortunately, when you get a large group of people, with our bodies, the human body is 70-something% water, so there's natural current flowing in and out of us all the time. And when you mix cell phone waves, microwaves, satellite waves, and radio waves in an environment bouncing around in and out of people, and then a large group of people together, it creates a shift in the environment. So a lot of those things can manifest as a result of our own conduction, because we're walking batteries, essentially. And we know what the full moon does to the currents of the ocean and the shifting of the waves. It gets more intense, it swells, it spills out more, and science has acknowledged that it wreaks havoc on our bodies as well. And especially if you have more water on your brain, it can make you act out as a result of it.
So you want to stay dehydrated as possible around the full moon.
During the full moon. Don't overdo it on drinks, kids.
That's good advice, man. Yes, Thick Rick.
Okay, so we've gotten a lot of texts about this place. I grew up in Grove City, and just south of that is Darbydale, where the Little Pennsylvania Cemetery is, better known as Woollyburger Cemetery. I've been there many times, a lot of friends after partying, and
was that like a thing? Like, we're going over to Woollyburger.
Let's go see if we can, survive Woollyburger Cemetery.
Was it during the day of the Satanic Panic where everybody thought they were a Satanist when they went to a cemetery?
This would have been in the late 80s.
Wait, people went there and they thought they were Satanists for going there?
Oh, all the time. Anytime people in the 80s and early 90s would go to cemeteries in a large group, they're like, oh, they must be Satanists.
Yeah.
Going up there to kill a cat. But that happened all the time in the 80s. You play Stairway to Heaven backwards, and it says Sweet Satan.
Yes.
It doesn't really, but it
my
sounds
Sweet
like
Satan.
it. Yeah.
So what do you know about Woollyburger? Anything?
I know nothing about Woollyburger.
They said it's the Willie Butcher House, stood for many years on London Groveport Road.
Is that connected to Woollyburger?
I think it is.
Oh.
And now it won't go to the page. I'm like, oh my God.
Are there any places that you haven't been to in Central Ohio that you want to get into?
Oh, there's Woollyburger now for sure.
Yeah, you need to check that out.
I would like to get back into the Mansfield Reformatory because I was actually banned from that location for a very long time.
How do you get banned?
I was in high school, and I went with a few friends during the Halloween season when they started opening it up for tours, just for fun. And I'm the reason there's a velvet rope around Old Sparky.
The
electric chair.
What'd you do? You jumped on it?
I thought it would be funny to have a picture taken of me sitting in the electric chair, and the sensation I felt when I sat in that chair will stay with me forever.
No.
It was
chills.
grotesque. It was vile. It's like I sat in the lap of Satan itself. It was...
Wait, so tell me,
unnerving.
so you walked up and you sat down. Are there signs that say "do not sit down"?
Yes.
Okay. So no, I'm just curious. Like, so there was no rope.
No, there was no rope at that time.
But just the sign says "don't sit down." But you're like, yeah, I would sit down too.
I'm like, Days of Nirvana and Soundgarden, and going to break my rusted cage and run. I'm all up in that, so I sat down in it, and I got sent outside, and my group got to go through the rest of the tour, but I wasn't allowed back in. And I don't even know if they have Old Sparky on display anymore. I have no idea, but at the time following that, they put up the velvet rope.
That's interesting. So, I mean, potentially, you could get back up. I think we could help get you back up.
Oh, I'm sure I could.
You sneak in.
I'm sure I could
grow a beard.
Well, right now they have a haunted house going on, so I'm sure that they'll let you come back in.
And my wife is hesitant about me going into prisons to do investigations. Insane asylums are a different case altogether. Well, because the darkest and most violent of human beings are sent to those places, which when they are in a prison, they only become more violent and angry and resentful.
Sure.
Unless they decide to turn their life around through rehabilitation. But the same negative, angry energy that is in those people when they're put in to the system, and then they die there, is then released in sort of like bonds to the location. So you're walking into someone's nightmare, essentially.
Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it. There's a golf course in Louisiana, downtown in like New Orleans, where these two women were finishing the 18th hole and they got shot and killed just And they said that people will call the police because they'll hear it play out.
Over and over.
Over and over again. And the police are like, nothing's happening.
That's so weird.
They will play out.
New Orleans has to be one of the best places to go.
I have never been
paranormal
to New Orleans.
activity.
Unbelievable.
I would love to tour the
so many ghost
plantations
tours
down there.
You could start with my grandma.
And they have that, and they have they have the above ground cemetery tours. But her grandmother does this thing like where she controls a table.
Well, instead of like a Ouija board, they use a table or a chair.
Almost like a seance.
But she's
No. It's like A,
it.
B, C. Every time the chair dips back, they use A, B, C, and it'll stop on a letter. And then it'll start over.
I'm real skeptical, and I've seen this thing move, and
Growing
she's not
up,
touching it.
we would do it, and we wouldn't do it in our houses. We would do it when we'd be on like vacation.
You'd go to hotels and do
it. We'd be on vacations and stuff like that, and then Grandmama would get the table.
Yeah, because they're really weird about not doing it in houses that you live in. You know, you don't want to bring anybody in that you don't want to stay permanently.
That's why I travel with kosher salt and holy water. I gargle with it.
Is that right?
No, I don't. I'm joking. But
I can't tell.
I actually do travel.
Well, you do have a briefcase,
with
is
holy
like
water. So.
Okay, it's like Money in the Bank. I thought you were a WWE wrestler.
So you do have one of those like.
Oh, that's like so. He's got a crucifix and this cross.
This is actually.
I'm going to take an Instagram video so people can see.
Croatia. This crucifix is from Croatia.
Now, why is that of significance? Like,
that is actually where my in-laws came from.
Oh,
I married into a group of Croatians, Italians, and
this related to Stipe Miocic up in Cleveland, the former heavyweight champion of the world.
No, I'm not actually.
Yeah,
I am not. I am, however, part Irish-Scottish.
Okay.
For the longest time, I was told I'm part Cherokee, but I took the Ancestry DNA test.
Hey, me too.
Meet Loper, who has
a psychic told me that I was. It's not Tecumseh. Direct relation to Tecumseh.
That was your past life. Not
I was told Pocahontas for me.
It was what, Randy?
This is great.
It was my
past life, which wouldn't mean you'd have the same DNA.
Whatever. I took my ancestry, and guess what? No one is whiter than this guy.
The problem is we got
Look at my skin. I'm not white. What's that?
We got whitewashed.
I know.
Our parents would be like 8 to 6%, which, they can get a card for that and certain benefits, but then when they have us, it's just like, oh, you're white now. So.
Yeah. If I had any sort of native relatives, they were all whores because, it all became so white, it was ridiculous. I mean, just terrible.
Truck and Dan said, I went to the lowest cell area at the lowest level in Mansfield Prison. And he didn't see anything, but he felt something to the point, he said he's never going back in capital letters. Never going back.
Man, this has been absolutely thrilling. And Neal Parks, we're going to have you back in before Halloween. Great to meet you, my friend. I know you listen to the show, and it's always great to have people in that.
I know I dress like I listen to WNCI, but I love you guys. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you said you listen every day.
Yeah, it's so good to see you, and say hi to everybody back in Chillicothe for us. And we're going to have you back in before the 31st. And if there's any questions that people have for him, you can email me at loper@theblitz.com, and the book is available on Amazon, right?
That's correct.
It is.
And it's called
Haunted Enough? Terrifying Tales to Tell Your Friends.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Neal Parks. Thanks, man.
Good night.